I'd like to start off the 80s in a positive, optimistic fashion. Yeah, I'll be undertaking a world tour sometime around the middle of the year, and it'll take me through till the autumn at least.
Have you thought a lot about the kind of show you're going to do?
Not really, now that the album's finished. This is time for me to start putting it together, conceptualizing how I want to present the things and whatever.
You've done so much in terms of theatrics, with whatever on the Diamond Dogs tour, not only with what you did with the spiders and the clothes and that kind of visual, but just the sets and that kind of very elaborate choreography and presentation, and then even the black and white tour, which to me was even more theatrical.
Yes, it was.
Just in its starkness and the electricity.
Well, the use of just using white light in different tones of white, from basically a yellow through to steaming white.
What would challenge you now on stage? What could you do? I mean, not necessarily to top all that, but just in terms of to keep yourself interested.
Yeah, I have some very definite ideas.
You can't tell me what they are.
No. Got to keep something back as a surprise.
Well, you're going to go to Europe, then you're coming here, right?
Even the order I haven't worked out yet. I don't know which way round. I haven't even chosen my band yet. I don't know who I'm taking out. When I finish this week, then next week I'll start getting down to sorting it out, all the way down the line.
Now,
all I really know at the moment is how it's going to be organised from the promoter's end and all that.
Just in general, do you have any sense of what kind of places you're going to play in this country? I mean, indoor arenas or theatres?
It's going to be sorted out to a pretty good bit of both, small and large. Small and large, because I do miss the smaller places. I've always felt very comfortable in a smaller venue.
When you say smaller, you don't mean clubs?
We'll see.
Oh, all right. Stadium's not that large.
We'll see.
You're performing 10 years after, all the pattern jumpsuits and the jock strap and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think it was about May in '73 that the Spiders disbanded.
There's a whole generation of kids who never saw any of that, except for pictures.
Yeah.
I mean, there really are, I guess, movies, videos? No, not really.
There is a movie which at some point I intend putting out that I started to look at this last year, being able to look at that period all over again in fairly objective light, and it's the funniest piece of material around. It's glorious. It's very sweet and very touching.
You weren't able to...
Of some of the last performances of the Spiders and Ziggy, with Ronson and Trevor and Woody, the whole bit. I mean, it's just great, and it looks kind of like a home movie, but I'll definitely put it out soon.
You weren't able to look at it before?
Well, I guess I could have done over the last few years, but it's only over this last year that I'm really quite happy about looking at all that stuff and not being sort of pulled back into it again, thinking, oh, God, what a nightmare all that became.
Carnegie Hall is the one I remember the most, wasn't it?
Isn't that funny?
It's a great show.
Yeah, I even remember that.
Yeah.
I flew that night. I'll never forget that. My poor debut, and I was like, as hoarse as a... that was horrendous. It was very rewarding because the audience were wonderful.
Such an event,
and I wanted to sing so much better, and there was my first sort of crack at New York, and I felt my voice going, and it was I didn't want to get pulled back into the stiff, icy, mechanized feel that's so rampant on a lot of my latter albums. I wanted to recapture a humanist quality which I feel is probably lacking in a lot of new music at the moment. It's the ultimate stereotype swing of the pendulum. When things reach a point to one extreme, there will be a natural gravitation back to a point which is the antithesis of that one. So you get a musical vocabulary which is for the larger part high-tech and icy and seemingly very self-possessed. There's going to be sooner or later a swing back to, well, what is the other side of that coin? Because I'm feeling imbalanced over one way, And for me that happens an awful lot. When I feel an imbalance, I naturally go to the further point to find out the other side of it immediately.
You think there's too many synthesizers now?
It's not that so much. I think it's the interpretation placed on the synthesizer. I think the synthesizer is a wonderful piece of mechanization. But I think it's been grouped into one very passive voice at the moment. It's now identified. The vocabulary, its whole language is one of a particular, very narrow kind of point of view, which is the reduction of emotion down to a pinpoint, and it becomes the vocal point for the technical society, which is kind of really passé. I think it's a shame that it's fallen into that very narrow corridor. But that's the synthesizer at its most accessible point, of course. It's almost become a caricature of itself. It almost parodies itself. Everything is and that's like its only vocabulary now, which is a shame, because in the beginning, when we first started messing about with that thing, there was a universe of expression in there somewhere.
It seems like from Young Americans on, and certainly Station to Station,
Yeah.
Low, Heroes, your voice was much more upfront. It also changed. I mean, I was re-listening to even Diamond Dogs and Ziggy, and your voice is thinner. I mean,
Yeah.
in those early albums.
Yeah.
Did you consciously change it? Did it just
Not
change?
really. I
did
found
it
that
develop? Did it get
did
richer?
change. It changed. It got lower. My voice, quite definitely, over that period, did get lower. And I felt that I also found that after constant singing and touring, because I was touring like a mad thing in those days. I mean, I was touring every other week. I mean, it was just constant tours. My voice was improving, or rather, it started developing a richer tonality to it, which I couldn't do much about it, so I just took advantage of it. I guess its tonality also changed with my finding that I wanted to refine a European approach as well after the Young Americans thing, and my need to get out of the States and all that, and it built up psychologically that I needed to find a new European identity. I've been growing up.
Is that really what it is? I mean,
up.
is it really just maturity, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
People are uncomfortable using that word.
No, I'm very happy with it. Very happy with it. I've got a long way to go. Awfully long way to go, as indeed do we all. But I've learned to relax into my present age, my present position. I feel comfortable being in mid-30s. It doesn't seem such an alien place to be. It feels a real place. I feel very positive about this age. I think you start to assess life and the facets of life in a very different way from the way you do when you're 20. It's just a rebalance. It's a shift in mental position. And once you can overcome that and realize that this way of looking at things is quite as valid as anything that you do with the exuberance of being 22 years old. And it's a necessary part of life. And it's a continual part of life and has been for thousands and thousands of years. And it's silly to evade the issue. I think it's the one thing that is not natural is to cut yourself off and say, well, now I'm 35 and think in a different fashion. This way of thinking is not valid anymore. It is valid. It's very valid. And so is the philosophy and the great objectivity of a man of 60, a thinking man of 60. It's quite important. In fact, when one looks at one's writers, you see the validity of their works as they get older. They become more universal in their communication, not quite as radical in a self-interest fashion. There becomes one starts to understand the universe, or rather becomes at ease with the universe. The God, doesn't this sound
No.
long-winded? But
So now, how many dates have you done? Are you bored yet?
No, I'm not. I'm just learning the words. No, I've done 15 so far.
15, but you always told me that you're only enthusiastic for like the first week or so. So it's 2 weeks now, right?
One can retain one's excitement far more when one's straight.
Has it really been a difference?
Oh, tremendous, yeah. Fantastic.
What are you doing after the shows?
I go to bed. I go to bed. I'm taking a lot of care over. It is a very long tour. It's a 6-month tour, so it requires some reasonable hours. You know. I've done every club in the world anyway. I know what they're all like.
What's been the best thing about this tour? What are you doing that you like? What are you doing that you hate? I mean, what have you had to work out? What's it been like so far?
It's just gone incredibly well. I mean, I I'm through the roof with the reaction that we've had in Europe. I mean, it's something. It's been like the Ziggy Stardust days or something. It's been quite extraordinary. I mean, the whole thing just feels youthful and very happy and very. It's something like a cross between, because of the nature of the show, a cross between an early R&B show and the second act of Hong Kong Harry.
What's Hong Kong Harry?
I just made it up. What can I say? I mean, I've absolutely knocked out. I mean, it's incredible.
Are you doing a lot more dates in America that haven't been announced?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons for going to do the US Festival for me is to prove that I can do festival shows quite as well as anybody else. I don't think it's ever really been thought that I could do them, and I myself have never wanted to do them, except on the last tour I did a couple of outdoor things in Australia, and I liked it unexpectedly so much that I thought I'd start doing them around the world on this next tour. There seemed no reason why I shouldn't. I'd always stayed away from them because I'd never done them before, and I didn't know if I'd be happy doing them. I'm not a high audience type artist. I've always done comparatively smaller sized arenas and shows from most other major rock artists, but I want to expand from that. I like doing big shows. They're fun and they're powerful, and I like it.
Do you do a different show for indoors than you would do for outdoors if you did outdoor stadiums in America?
No, exactly the same show. The difference, I think, is that I'm using a rotation of something like 30 to 35 songs that I picked from. So there's a sort of an embryonic show, and around that, within that, I fit in different songs per performance, or every batch of 4 performances. Something to keep our own excitement as musicians working.
How on earth did you pick the material for this tour? I mean, you've got how many albums to draw
19.
from? 19 albums to draw from, plus what you told me 5 that you've never done on stage before.
Yeah.
So how did you choose?
It was taking a fair sampling of every album I've done, I think. And I think I've done everything except I couldn't really fit in anything from Man Who Sold the World. That's the only one I haven't really got anything from, but I've got something from everything.
Do you have favorite songs, or do you think of what other people's favorite songs?
Half and half, 50%. I mean, I've picked out, I think, the very favourites that I know will be expected of me as a performer. Plus, I've complemented it with stuff that I personally enjoy doing very much.
Which ones are you doing, just generally? I mean, I'll see later, but
I like doing.
Yeah.
I like doing things like Golden Years. I like very much. Sometimes I do Red Sails. What else? Ashes to Ashes is a fun number to do as well.
I don't want to waste any time. I want to ask you, it's the end of the European tour. You'll be in America in a few weeks. Are you looking forward to coming to the States with this show? Really?
Yeah.
What's different about this tour?
It's gone very fast. It's gone so quickly. I can't believe that Europe's over already. I mean, it just feels like we've begun. The morale of the band, the guys themselves, I mean, the best human band I've worked with ever, I think. It's a lot of jokesters in the band, and it keeps things very live and funny all the time.
You've told me many times in the past about how you always felt you were acting on stage. Do you feel you still are? You said you weren't really a rock star. What's this tour been like in regard to that?
I'm not a rock and roller. I mean, I play rock and roll music, and I write in a rock and roll somewhere in the rock and roll area, but I'm not a confirmed old rock and roller by any means. I mean, I just feel like I probably expand myself on stage rather than I'm not trying to actually take on a new persona or anything, but for the sake of the large crowds that we've been working to, one expands one's personality, or, you know, the bits of it that you feel sort of have an empathy with the audience. So this is natural as you can get in front of 60,000 people or whatever.
Well, how was it different last night at Hammersmith when you performed to, what is it?
It was like
3,000?
doing the Tower Theatre, Philadelphia, something like that. It's a 2,800 seater. The smallest we've done so far has been 12,000, I think. No, maybe, I think Brussels was probably the smallest, about 8,000. It's very odd to readjust to that situation. I mean, the band, we tend to play much louder on stage than we probably should do in a place like Hammersmith. But overall, it was wonderful to have that close contact with the crowd. To actually, I felt I was holding people's hands throughout the entire thing, not realising I'd held onto a hand for like 15 minutes.
How have you changed the set? When I saw you at the US Festival, there were a lot of songs that were not in the show at Hammersmith last night. What are you doing for the States?
Well, we put together, when we first started rehearsing, we put together what a new band could learn feasibly in the 3 or 4 weeks that we sort of rehearse. So we put together about 30 songs, and then I pick and choose from week to week which set, you know, we sort of change it around to make sure that we keep interested, and so we purposely drop songs out so that when we go back to doing them again, it feels exciting again, you know, and you keep interchanging like that, and it gives it a longer lease of life. Because once you get on the road, that's it. There's no way you can start rehearsing new songs. It's just the sound checks, especially in these open places, you only get 15 minutes before the kids start coming in because the first band's on. So you can rule out learning new songs once you're on the road. So you're stuck with a show. You've got a show, and you have to do the show throughout the world. And so the only precaution you can take is learn 6 extra than you'll actually need. So at least you can keep changing at least one a night. Somebody's got something to look forward to. What was different about last night is that we just did away with any sort of costumes and back set. I mean, like stage set. We just dropped all that because it was too big for the Hammersmith place. So.
What about these costumes? Now, these sort of flags of all nations outfits that your band wears.
Yeah, it's a musical UNICEF Christmas card. It's kind of...
Did you plan that out?
Yeah. Yeah, the idea was to make it look something between a soul show and the second act of Aladdin. You're familiar with English pantomime.
The last time you said Hong Kong Harry, but I asked you what that was, and you said you just made that up.
I realised that Aladdin is some people know that better. It has that kind of, you know, it's a very tongue-in-cheek kind of way of presenting a band.
Well, what about the choreography? What about the posing on stage? I mean, the Sims brothers do a bit of stuff, and you do some little mime things, and that saxophone player jumped down and...
Lenny Pickett.
What was
the most wonderful dervish swirl thing he did. He did it once in rehearsals, and I thought it was so amazingly funny to see this such a huge man move very quickly and very gracefully across the stage that fast that I told him, I said, just keep that in. Put that in red cells. That's a much better solo than the one you'd be playing. It's not. I mean, of course, it's not. I mean, his solo playing is excellent, but it's just such a great thing that he does.
But I mean, have you rehearsed all that sort of choreography and everything?
Things that are very obvious as group pieces, like for instance, the beginning of Golden Years when it becomes when it's a sit-down thing and everybody's sort of doing the neo-realist Russian type position. Those things that are little cameo vignette-y things, yeah. But I mean, everything else is to grab, you know. But there are set pieces in about half the things. But it's probably, because of that, it creates a spontaneous feel for us on stage, because everybody knows after 3 minutes of dithering about that at least they'll have one place to go to that they know that they should be in, and it gives a starting point for the next song. It's better than the total lack of spontaneity, say, in a band where they don't do anything, but that's called spontaneous. I'm not quite sure. The spontaneity of standing still by a microphone, I don't see that as spontaneous.
You think you're singing better, moving better?
Now, yeah.
I think you're dancing.
Now the tour has got going, yeah, I feel a lot better on stage. My voice has improved considerably since even 3 weeks ago. It was hard to get the high notes in the beginning because we'd put in so many rehearsals and then did 7 gigs. It's the only time we've done 7 gigs in a row plus 3 days rehearsals before that. I think I've probably pushed it a bit for that first couple of weeks. But now things have eased out a bit and it's come back again.
You said something to me once about feeling that Little Richard songs or that kind of very early R&B and so forth was very theatrical. And your shows in the 70s were theatrical in terms of sets and props and characters and so forth.
But very serious.
Serious. This tour, you've said so far, you think has a real sense of humor about it.
Yeah.
Right? Do you think that it's theatrical in terms of having more warmth? Do you think something of that is coming across?
I think that it's the first tour where it's very, very pleasing to me that when I come off stage at the ends of these shows, I really feel as though I've been able to go on stage and say, look, this is me, and I'm going to sing my songs my way with my own real sensibility about what's happening here tonight between you and the band and me. A lot of it is just good fun, and we're having a very good time up here, and I want it to come out over to you as people. And one does have that feeling. It's not like a Conqueror Returns type thing that some of the old shows started to become like, the Thin White Duke and all that. I mean, it was a different kind of relationship between the audience and myself, and
But that was because I was purposely putting out a very sort of hard, icy vibe. I mean, it was a different kind of feeling. This time it's almost, I didn't ever think I'd hear myself saying this, but it's like the audience and myself are like just together. It's trying to come back to being a person again in the eyes of the audience. And it certainly has no pretensions to being a serious, heavy, statement-filled show. I think that's puzzled a lot of people, but I mean, it's exactly what I want it to be. Exactly what I want it to be.
There are a lot of ballads on the show, but you find them uplifting ones. And there's a lot of material from your last 5 albums, yes? The ones that you hadn't performed on stage before. Why uplifting?
I think the few sparse times I try to write about any emotion with one person to another, that for me is uplifting. When it doesn't have, sort of one man alone on an island type things, there's nothing very uplifting about those. But even if you're talking about the problems of love, that's an uplifting. At least you're presenting the problems as an artist to yourself. So for me, that is an uplifting experience.
You feel that you're an artist, yes? Do you feel it's possible for one to be an artist in this context of rock and roll tours with 150 trunks and 300 cases of Perrier water or whatever the logistics are that have to move 2 complete different stage sets? All the things that have to get you from one city to another, and the whole business of rock and roll touring. How do you maintain a sense of artistry?
Is Ballet Rambert, who undergoes exactly the same thing with their trunks and their lorries to cart their scenery around, for instance. I mean, or was the Russian ballet, was that artistic? This tour, as far as I know, has been the most successfully run tour of any of the major tours.
Really?
It works like clockwork. Nothing goes wrong. From the guys waking up at the proper time to everybody getting the right coach. It's the best organised tour I've personally been on, and I've always been on well-organised tours. But this one just takes the cake. It's fantastic. And it's the cleanest backstage area. Everything about it is controlled, but not in an authoritarian ways that everybody wants it to be successful, and everybody's just pulled out all the stops to make it work properly.
When you think that you have 4 months ahead of you of still doing this, how do you feel?
Fine. I mean, if it goes this quickly, I'll be quite satisfied.
You're coming to the States. One look at your itinerary shows that there's tremendous blocks of dates that say TBA, which means to be announced.
Yeah.
After Washington, D.C., I think there's 2 weeks of that when you're sort of in the East Coast. Before and after Los Angeles, there's that same situation. Are you doing a lot more dates that haven't been announced yet?
Yes, yeah, sure.
Well, when we talked at the US Festival, you said that one of the reasons you wanted to do the US Festival was to prove that you could do these large festival-type shows, and you wanted to see what the reaction was or what the feeling was from that show before you decided if you were going to do any in the States. How did you feel about doing that show, and are you going to do any more in the States?
At that time, when you asked me that before, that was the one outdoor show. I mean, that was it. But now Europe has been solid since the first 2 in Brussels and the couple in London. Now we've done nothing but outdoor shows, the entire European stint, and I feel really very, very at home with them. So I would expect to see a number of outdoor shows in America turning up as well. I feel quite very happy in that environment now. It was strange in the beginning. You breathe differently is the major thing.
What do you mean breathe differently?
There's far more oxygen. You're breathing in a completely different way on stage outdoors than you are when you breathe indoors.
Really?
Yeah, you take much deeper breaths all the time.